Hi, everybody. Welcome to 700 Club Interactive. Well, Valentine's Day is coming up quickly, and for many people, it's a celebration of love and romance, while for others, it's a reminder that they are still single. However, if you're ready to date, psychologist Dr. Henry Cloud says that you don't have to stay single. Matter of fact, he says you can be dating in just 6 months. Gordon?
All right. Well, we've got the promise here, and with us is Dr. Henry, who says you say 6 months. That's quite a thing,
yeah.
You know. And I tell you, I work with a lot of single women who go,
I know they don't believe that, but here's what happened. I was, out speaking across the country, and there was this year where, and I'm not kidding, every time I would go give a talk, I could be talking about basket weaving. And what would happen is 3 or 4 women would come up afterwards, like they always do with speakers, and say, so can we ask you a question? And I'd say, yeah, and they would say, why aren't we dating? I don't know why you're not dating, right? But I kept hearing this city after city. So I said, you know what, I don't know why, but I'm going to find out. And I actually put together groups from all over the country, and I said, I'm going to research this problem. Why singles who are stuck in their dating lives and wanting to be dated, why isn't it happening? And I found out there were reasons. And so where the book came from was a program to get them working through the issues that are keeping them stuck.
Okay. What are the top issues?
Well, one of the, and it sort of depends on who you're talking to. But, a lot of times if you're talking to church people, one of the top issues is that they have been taught that you're just supposed to trust God to bring you your mate, and it's all in His hands. When we don't, that theology is not true about anything else in life. How are you going to get a job? We're just going to trust God. He's going to. No, you go out and He's going to bring you one, but you got to look. The birds, He provides for the birds of the air, but they got to leave the nest and go where the bugs are, right? I was doing a radio show one day, and a lady called and said, hey, "You're talking about all this dating stuff. That's not that's not the way that God does it. God is going to bring my mate to me." And I said, "Well, do you have to do anything?" And she said, "Well, I trust the Lord." I said, you have to leave the house?" She said, "I believe He could bring him to my front door." And I said, "Well, if you don't want to marry the FedEx guy or a Jehovah's Witness, you better go outside," right?
So, pizza delivery.
Yeah, there you go. So the first thing is to take responsibility for getting active, that you've got to do some things. Another big reason is they have a type. I see all the time, they will say, well, he's not my type or she's not my type. And 90% of the time, that type comes from some kind of pathology in their own head, that they've chosen a certain type that's attractive to them, sometimes because of things that they lack in themselves, sometimes because of maybe ways that they've been hurt in the past by somebody that's strong, so they gravitate towards somebody that's kind of, softer or weaker, but they need the strength as well, and then they're frustrated when they find the one. And so there's a lot of things like that. But one of the other big ones is that I think that singles see dating as too much about marriage. Like, they're on safari. They think, I want to go find the one, right?
I got to bag the big one, huh?
Exactly. Instead of being active in life and meeting tons of different kinds of people and learning through the process who you are and what you like and don't like and all of that.
I mean, your book, I got to get the title in there, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. You actually recommend that you date frequently and date a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Why?
And I have 2 daughters.
Because a lot of Christians would say that's dangerous.
Well, that's a little bit like saying, I'm not going to live life because it's dangerous. Certainly there's danger out there, right? I'm not going to drive a car because it's dangerous. So you want to practice safe dating, right? You don't go out with strangers and somebody that you don't have some way of knowing that it's actually safe. But here's what's important. I think that people should marry the one that kind of stands out in a crowd, right? Well, if it's a crowd of one, anybody can stand out. And what you see is people like that sometimes they're so either desperate or needy or so want to get married above all else that they'll kind of like get attached way too early. And the experience of getting to know a lot of different kinds of people and not giving your heart away until somebody is deserving of it, or they have the character, or all sorts of other things, that's a very important process.
All right.
Now there are exceptions. There are those that marry their childhood sweethearts. It happens. But for the most part,
that's kind of rare, isn't it? Though?
It is rare. And what you hear, sadly, more so, is people who don't date enough, they'll get married too quickly.
Too quickly, and they haven't really grown up.
And they have not grown up. They haven't done the leaving.
They don't know who they are yet.
And they don't know who he or she is. Right. I hear the too quick thing too much.
What are you saying, and I get this one a lot, as to why singles aren't dating, is there aren't any good prospects. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
There aren't just any... Nobody's good out there.
Nobody's good. I'm the only good one. Everybody else is bad, right? You know, it's really interesting.
Or all the good ones are married.
Or some other, and I'm going to be hard here, excuse. Because that, in my research, and I'm telling you, I've worked with a lot of singles on this, and when people start to actually get in the process, they find out there are a lot of good ones out there. A, I didn't have the eyes to see them because I was looking for my type. Or B, and here's where it gets hard, sometimes their own personal issues that they're not taking responsibility for are blinding them to what's right in front of them a lot of times. I spoke one time in Chicago, like on a Tuesday, to a big singles group. And in the Q&A, a woman raised her hand and she says, you know, there just aren't any good prospects in the Midwest because people have been here forever, and I moved here from somewhere, and they've been here forever. They already know everybody. You can't break in. It would be a lot easier to be single if I lived in a place like L.A. On Thursday night, I'm speaking in L.A. True story. Woman raised her hand. She said, you know, the problem with L.A. is everybody's so transient. Nobody's been here very long. It'd be a lot easier in the Midwest. And here's the thing. Until somebody takes ownership of, this is where I am, what do I need to do to work out my salvation with fear and trembling, right? That I've got a responsibility here. They're not going to find that there are many, many good prospects out there. And I hear that excuse all the time, but you get them working the program, and then what I end up with, and I'm not making this up, I'll be out there on the road, and a couple will walk up to me, and they'll hold up their rings, and they say, we worked it, you know, we did it. And you start to interview them, and they thought there were no good ones out there until you get moving. And when you get moving, things are going to happen.
We've took our cameras out to the streets, and they have questions for Dr. Henry Cloud. First one comes in from Mariah. Take a look.
What kind of qualities should I look for in a date?
What I tell people is, you know, I would want you to go, anybody that's safe, I'd want you to go out with almost anybody once. Because, and again, this isn't about marriage, this is about learning and growing. If they're safe, you know, I'm not too concerned about that the funnel is narrow on who you're going to go out on a date with, you know, to lunch or to coffee or something. That's not a big deal. But when you start to narrow it down to figure out, you know, where you're going to give your heart or who you're going to get interested in, that's where you've really got to begin to look at some really important character attributes. And so one of the things that I would want to know is, what is his emotional intelligence? You know, what is his capacity for truly, you know, connecting with you emotionally? A lot of, and especially women, this is just true, they will be drawn to detached men and feel a lot of longing and wanting him to, and they'll confuse that longing for love because it's, you know, sort of exciting and all of that. I ask women and men, after being with a person, what do you feel inside? Do you feel lonely, or do you feel like, you know, you connected? What is their ability to, in a relationship, grant freedom and separateness? You know, one of the most important things in a good relationship is that neither one loses their independence to have time apart and their own interests and all of that sort of stuff. And if one of them's too controlling or too possessive, that's a big, big, big red flag.
And in your book, you have a real good tip, and it's one to sort of spot the emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And that is, are they still dependent on their parents?
Oh, gosh. We could write a whole book on that one, right? Marriage is something that adults should do. And there should be two adults present when it happens. What happens is a lot of times people are in an adult body, but they really haven't left home in some significant way. Either they're still emotionally too attached to their parents, or they're not managing, and, you know, the guardian and manager over their own lives are still financially dependent, or something. And you're not going to have a good cleaving until you've had a good leaving. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have relationships with their parents, but it means they're independent adults. And so, you know, a strong faith, good values, but something else that people don't talk about enough is what is their management of life like? This sounds crass, but I had a friend who said that his daughter's boyfriend asked him to dinner, and he thought he was going to get the asking for the hand conversation. And he said, "What do I do?" And I said, "Tell him, you know, you're a wonderful young man. My daughter loves you. I would like to give you my blessing, and I'll be glad to after a few more interviews. Next time, let's get together. I want you to bring me your last 2 years' tax returns and your credit report." Wow. And he said, "I'm not going to do that." I said, "No, I'm dead serious. White out the numbers. I don't care about the, you know, how much he makes. Here's what I'm interested in. Does he have them? I mean, is he organized enough to where he's managing his life? And on the credit report, like, he's made promises to other people. How has he fulfilled them? Is she going to go in with a lot of, you know, debt and problems? Now, it's not just the financial piece. What I'm after there is I want to look at somebody's character of how well they're managing life. Because if they're not managing life and they're not happy on their own, then they're looking to try to get management or happiness from you, and that doesn't work.
Well, on just dating, you're not going to ask for the credit report.
Probably not. You might want to ask him to pay for dinner.
All right, we got time for one more video question. This one comes in from Kirk.
What do you think about online dating?
I said in the book, get over the stigma, join a service. Meaning a dating service. Now, here's why I say that. And a lot of people feel weird about the online dating thing. Think about this. When somebody's in college, or high school or college, and if you just take the college example, you're on a dating farm. Really, I mean, there's this property, and everybody there's single, and they're all in your age group and demographic. Well, then you leave there, and usually in those early to mid-20s, there's enough of those connections that remain. And then somebody gets married, and then somebody moves for their job. And that starts to fray, like in kind of the mid to late 20s. And people find themselves sometimes very, very organized in their life around their job. And the traffic pattern of their job doesn't really get them in front of, you know, eligible people to date. They see the same 6 people at the office. They go home, they see the roommate. Saturday they run errands, Sunday they're in church. And so what I think a service does is it does what used to happen in our society, where Aunt Sally had a friend, Mabel, and Mabel had a nephew, and, you know, communities were stable and people had connections. Now we're so fragmented, people don't know people's friends and all of that. And I say what you've really got to do, that a dating service does, is it kind of just is a way of matching you with pools of people where you would find the kinds of people that you would want to date. Now, again, you have to be careful. I'm not saying do anything psycho, but there are ways to do that. And I've worked with a lot of people who, after reading the book and beginning to do that, that's how their dating life began to turn around, and then they found their mates.
Yeah, like 25% of all marriages now come through that. But you do have to be careful, and a warning here, don't give out personal information on the first one. Meet at a public area, neutral, that you can get up and walk away.
Right. Or the second one, I mean, anybody can fool you once, right? And you want to know the circles of who they know and all that sort of stuff. But if you think about today's world, we're taking online interactive questions. This is life now. So to have dating be in part, have something to do with the online life is the way that people are living life. So it just makes sense.
Okay, Dr. Henry Cloud's book, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping, and their credit report is in bookstores nationwide. Henry, thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you.
All right. Up next, an extreme makeover, Orphans Promise style, right after this.
The doctor said to me, Peggy, you don't understand. Pancreatic cancer is inoperable and incurable. And he says, well, Peggy, you've got 2 months to live. It was like he was telling me, go to the store. There was no compassion. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. My life was an hourglass. I was home, laying on the couch, just dying. My sister Pam called the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. When I got there, I knew that I was going to be cared for. I met with the doctor after the tests were done and said, how long do I have? And he looked at me and he said, Peggy, we did a lot of tests on you, and I never saw one thing stamped on the bottom of your foot that said you were going to die in 2 months. You have no expiration date. I thought, wow.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is unlike any other cancer hospital, full of hope, committed to your fight. We use every weapon: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, nutrition, spiritual support, and mind-body medicine. We surround you with a real team, working together, all under one roof.
Each time I went back to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I responded better. My tumors were shrinking. Came back in September again, and they still couldn't see anything. I said, you're kidding me. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep testing, but we can't see the tumors anymore.
Please call the number on your screen to speak with an oncology information specialist and receive a life-changing information kit and DVD packed with valuable information. Call now and learn about treatment options you may not even know exist.
It's really unbelievable how one doctor can tell me I have 2 months to live, and then I go to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and they save my life. Hope is a mainstay. Hope is everything.
Don't give up. Your fight is our fight. Call Cancer Treatment Centers of America today.
Well, right now, we want to introduce you to a boy named Sasha. For years, he was living on the dangerous streets of Ukraine, but now he has a safe place to call home every day, thanks to CBN's Orphans Promise.
Sasha lives with 200 other children at an orphanage in Donetsk, Ukraine.
My father stole things all the time. Then someone killed him. My mom died of cancer. I was living on the street. Some people catch me and I wound up in the orphanage.
He likes the orphanage but doesn't get a lot of care or special attention there. So every day when classes are finished, he walks a couple of blocks to a youth center supported by Orphans Promise. Pastor Oleg Nabokov runs the center.
This center helps orphans prepare for life outside the orphanage. A lot of our kids enter universities and find jobs.
When Pastor Oleg first bought this building, this is what the entire downstairs looked like. He had no money to renovate it, but then Orphans Promise got involved. Just look at it now. It is easy to see why the kids love it here.
I feel accepted and welcome. How else can I put it? It's my home.
But the cold winter presents a challenge at the youth center. If the work outside seems rough, stoking the fire isn't any better. So Orphans Promise installed a new gas heating system. Now the kids can spend more time hanging out and enjoying the computer room where they play games and learn career skills that will help them in the future. Because of this center, orphans abandoned by society are now giving back to their community. Over the summer, they put on a passion play that 3,000 people came out to see. Sasha played the lead role of Jesus Christ.
I felt like Jesus himself chose me for the role. When that happened, I know I had to live a good life. I decided I would never smoke or drink or use bad language.
With the help of CBN donors, this center is changing orphans' lives and reaching out to the entire community.
I just want to thank you for making such a beautiful place for us. Everyone here is great. What else can I say?
You know, here's a statistic that might startle you. Do you know that less than 1% of the orphans in the world will ever be adopted? And most of them age out of the orphanages they're in at the age of 16. They have no idea who they are, how to live life, where to go. They've never been a part of a family, but they're expected to go out and become a part of their communities and their cultures. Through Orphans Promise, you're allowing us to make a difference in the lives of these kids. We're training them, we're teaching them English, computer skills. The love of God becomes prevalent in their lives, and they begin to understand that they have value and purpose, that God has a plan for their lives. If you'd like to be a part of helping us to bring that kind of direction, that kind of focus, that kind of love to these children who have no voice, then call 888-777-1999 or log on to cbn.com. Just say, I'd like to become a part of what Orphans Promise is doing around the world. We thank you in advance on behalf of the children. Well, still ahead, love at first sight with one small problem. That's next on 700 Club Interactive. We'll be right back.
Here we go.
Get ready, because now the more fun you have, the more fit you can get. Introducing the Curves Circuit with Zumba Fitness. It's the only class that mixes the music and moves of Zumba with the proven strength training of curves for one wildly effective 30-minute workout. Dance on in for a free week. Burn up to 500 calories in 30 minutes. And shimmy as you sculpt. Call now to reserve your place in a class that'll fill up fast. The Curves Circuit with Zumba Fitness. It's the wildly effective workout that's only at Curves.
Well, do you believe in love at first sight? Eddie Vargas does. The moment he met his wife, he knew he wanted to marry her. But there was just one problem. She refused to date him for some very good reasons.
Coming of age in Southern California in the 80s was a good time for Eddie Vargas.
I was having fun. There was weed, there was coke, there was beer, there was girls, and it was this culture that had developed in Redondo Beach at this time.
Eddie's first experience with drugs happened at age 13.
I go to one of my friend's house, and he and one of my other friends are smoking weed. And I was like, hey, let me try that. And I loved it.
Dad! During Eddie's early teen years, his father abandoned the family. Without a positive male role model, Eddie slid deeper into substance abuse.
By the time I was 15 years old, I was already smoking weed almost every day. And then it went from weed and beer to someone popped out with some coke. And then I tasted the coke, and then that just took me for a whole other spin.
Eddie's unwillingness to stop partying and confront his addiction led to constant strife at home. So at age 15, he left.
I had to do something to survive, so of course I started selling weed, and eventually I started selling coke.
For the rest of his teen years, he was the life of the party. But the glitz and glamour began to fade over time, and Eddie was left alone and hurting.
I was at the bottom of the barrel, at the end of the rope. I mean, I've tried to commit suicide. I've OD'd on more than one occasion. I've driven cars when I shouldn't have driven them.
The wheels were coming off of Eddie's self-indulgent life, but he didn't know a way out. Then one day, a friend of a friend crossed his path.
There's this gorgeous girl that is driving this car, and I just saw her, and I was like, wow.
And kind of briefly met him, and of course was instantly attracted to him.
And I don't know what, and I don't know why, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm gonna marry this girl. I just fell right there for the very first time. I've never experienced that in my whole life, but I fell for this girl.
Roxanne was a new Christian, and even though she was attracted to Eddie, she knew she couldn't get involved with someone so immersed in the drug and party scene.
And we're just hanging out, and I approach her and I tell her, you know, I really want to get to know you.
My heart sank, and I was like, you know, no, I can't. And he asked why, and I said, because you're not a Christian.
I said, well, what do I have to do to be born again? I mean, what do I have to do? And she said, look, just why don't you come to church with me on Sunday?
While Eddie's motives in going to church were to get close to Roxanne, God was about to change his life in a big way.
I'm sitting there and I hear a message of hope, a message of salvation, a message of restoration and healing and of power, and that I am hearing things like, you can be forgiven of everything that you'd ever done. Now, mind you, I've done a lot of wrong in my life. I've been addicted. I've had sex. I've hurt people. I've hurt my family. I mean, you name it. I've done wrong. I've done dirt. And I'm listening to all these things, and I'm being drawn into it, and I've never felt this before.
For the first time in his life, Eddie felt he needed to make a change.
I hear him say, if you're here this morning and you need to be forgiven and you need God to do a miracle in your life and you want a new life, and I'm sitting there, can I really have a new life? I remember going to that altar and getting on my knees and saying, God, if you're real, then you'll take all this away from me. God, if you're real, you'll change me. And I said, God, forgive me for everything that I'd ever done. And I felt like warm oil being poured over me. And it was just like the presence of God just came over me. And literally I felt forgiven for everything that I'd ever done. It really is a bona fide miracle, because when I got up from that altar, I did not want to be the person that I was when I walked in those front doors.
With the help of his new church family, Eddie discovered the hope and peace of being a Christian, and he closed the door on his wild past.
It happened to me, but I'm seeing him, and I'm like, wow. And little by little, I started seeing that transformation in him. 6 months later, he proposed. Yeah, and 6 months after that, we got married.
Here we are, going on 20 years of marriage, and God's done some amazing things.
Today, Eddie tells everyone there's hope in God if you'll look to him.
You have to decide to allow God. God is a gentleman. He doesn't force himself on anybody. But he will come into anybody who asks. And if you allow God to come in, he'll change your life for the better. I'm a living testimony of that.
As Eddie sat in church that day listening to the pastor talk about love and forgiveness and the opportunity for a start over, a new beginning, he said, is it possible? Could I really have the opportunity to do this over again, to do it right, to do it differently? And the answer was yes. And that's the answer for you too today. You may be watching Eddie's story, and I'm struck by the fact that, some things happened in Eddie's life that left him vulnerable on the inside. And it was like the perfect storm. At the same time those things happened, his friends invited him to start smoking weed, and then he got involved in a bunch of other things. And, life just can start to spiral downward pretty quickly when all things come together like that. And then you begin to feel like you're the victim of it all. But you can have a new beginning. You can have a start over, not because you've got the power to do that, but because God loves you, because he has a plan and a purpose and you're a part of it, because he invites you to come to the table that he set for you, to dine with him at a banquet beyond what you could imagine. You can have forgiveness for your sins. You can have a change of heart and mind. How do you do it? You surrender. You come to the living, loving God and you say, God, I don't want to do this without you. I have blown it, and I need your forgiveness. I need a new beginning. I need a start over. God is as close as the words from your heart. He's here right now. It's not chance that you're watching this program. He's inviting you. He's inviting you to let him come into your life and give you a brand new beginning. If you'd like that, we've got people standing by who've made that same commitment in their lives, who came from a life of being lost and sinful into a brand new beginning with the God who not only gives you a fresh start, but the power to live it differently. Call and pray with them. The number is toll-free. It's 888-777-1999. You need to dial a 1 first, 1-888-777-1999. Just call and say, tell me more about how to start over with Jesus. They'd love to pray with you today. We want to thank you for joining us on the Interactive Show. Leave you with this promise from Hosea. Act on the principles of love and justice, and always live in confident dependence on your God. God bless you.